Hi friends, I'm Sterling Hart and this is Dreamlight, where we work with dreams. This is part 2 of how to improve our ability to have prophetic dreams. In part 1 we looked at different types and their examples. In this second part we will examine practices. There are 2 related and intertwined things we need to do. The first is that we need to remove psychological blocks and focus our minds so that we have good concentration. The second is that we need to train to be open and receptive. Doing this will increase our ability to come into contact with subliminal consciousness. In the waking time, our intuition and ability to access our subtle senses will increase, and in dreaming this consciousness will mix in and replace the psychological elements. The first step is to work on the types of self-knowledge that we gain with psychological dreams. These dreams show us what we were focused on in the waking time. They also reveal the psychological undercurrents that shape our perception. These undercurrents are patterns, conditioning, and emotional habits as we become more aware and start to create a space of self-reflection. Then we can undo habits and patterns that no longer serve us and create more awareness of the things that we value. When first dealing with the meaning from dreams, we must remove our sense of literalness, expecting the dream to be reality itself. So if you dream of someone, you think it is them, rather than a representation of an aspect of yourself. There are all sorts of errors that can be committed in this way. We also have to be wary of preconceived ideas as to the meaning of a symbol. For instance, when presented with a character in a dream, a woman in a red hat, our preconceived idea is that the woman represents nurturing or creative energy or any of a long list of gender associations. This can prevent us from examining the character in terms of their relation to our personal associations and the context of the dream. On the one hand, we may have encountered the stock meaning of dreams, and the dream may respond to these. It's our own mind, after all. But on the other side, these can rush in and trample any associations we would get if we actually examined the dream. The red hat might remind us of the Red Hat Society and of our grandmother's coldness, which takes you to a recent personality conflict at work. But we were busy dealing with the idea that women represent nurturing. We have to learn when to use ideas through experience. Then we run into another difficulty. When we examine a symbol, we need to associate with it. What does this remind me of? Or what do I think of this? For instance, you dream of a shopping cart. This may remind you of a recent incident in a store, or you may associate it with accumulating things, or the daredevil who rode one like a surfboard down a steep hill. When working with associations, it is easy to overuse the process. So you can end up with a long list of associations. While making a comprehensive list can be useful for training creativity and brainstorming to keep coming up with ideas, it can also confuse things if there isn't a focus on how it relates to the dream. One of the benefits of dream interpretation is that over time you will recognize what is important. This will become important in the waking time as you observe the thoughts, the imaginary dramas, and the memories that appear in your mind. You will begin to recognize something that is important as opposed to random wanderings. Years ago in college, I lived with a friend. We would talk about things in the evening while standing in the hallway. My friend's girlfriend got an internship and left for 3 months. She had to work strange hours and would call when she could in the evening. It could be either early or late. I would be talking with my friend and notice that he would start to move closer to the phone. This was before cell phones. This had happened enough times that I could predict she was about to call. He would move towards the phone and his conversation would shift too. He could feel her about to call. I could feel it too and follow the clues. But in talking about it with him, he didn't see it. It wasn't a matter of belief, it was a matter of paying attention. Big or small, many things will reveal themselves before they unfold. If you're used to paying attention to your stream of consciousness, you can start to pick up on these connections to the subliminal. In the same way, you can also see things coming up that you are likely to dream. Over time, in working with your dream, you will begin to have a sense of what is important. Some associations will strike you or make sense. It will resonate with you. So we have 2 things working together, paying attention to how our mind works and seeing it in reflection in dreaming. You dream of something and see how it relates to your waking life. You can see how some of your past experiences shape how you react to the world. The subliminal consciousness has deeper resources. These are often covered or distorted by psychological elements. Our emotional and mental habits, preferences, desire, and ego agendas. These can sometimes be seen in the interpretation itself. For instance, wanting a dream to be an indicator of future events. That desire will cause us to jump to conclusions or bend everything to meet our desire. Making mistakes can be beneficial if you are willing to look closely at why you made them and see how to avoid them in the future. We can also be uncomfortable with aspects of ourselves and avoid dealing with some material. If you work with a dream group, sometimes there are things you don't want to share. Looking at the dream, you want to notice and appreciate the apprehension of entering uncomfortable areas. It is a valuable ability to be able to look at things clearly regardless of how you feel or what you want or prefer. There is also a difference between a clinical type of trauma that is serious enough that professional help is needed and common sorts of psychological disturbances which can be dealt with given our inner resources. Key resources are a sense of sincerity, courage, curiosity, a will to make progress, and aspiring to see the truth. A second aspect is our concentration, to create the openness needed for the subliminal elements to come up into our minds. We need to be aware of our normal thoughts and feelings. This awareness is facilitated if the mind is steady and we have focus. This is a habit that aids us in anything we do. For instance, when I walk the dog, I aim to be very open and receptive, do a kind of walking meditation or focus, usually on some project. But as I walk the dog and see things in the neighborhood, it is quite easy to drift around. I could see the neighbor has put up a new lawn gnome. I immediately want to name him. I will remember the old story of someone stealing a lawn gnome and sending back photos of the gnome from various travels around the world. Or I might imagine talking with the neighbor about the gnome and hearing myself making a joke. Just as the imaginary drama completes, my mind could follow something else, such as a car going too fast or the UPS truck. Any number of things could be happening with the mind as it leaps about. The goal is to interact with the world, but to stay on the self-directed course with the mind. The wandering mind makes it more difficult to be aware of subliminal undercurrents for intuition to arise, except for exceptional events. So while walking the dog, when the mind wanders, I aim to set it back on my intent. But also, I often quickly look for where I lost focus and what triggered it. It is like remembering how our conversation got started and what has been discussed. This awareness of where my mind is and the return to concentration is key. The same sort of thing happens when you wake up and recall dreams. A sudden intrusion of contents in the mind can be seen when one is more focused. We notice something is disturbing us, something is out of place. Over time, you feel or have insight into things, and you can more intuitively sense what's going on, separating out the noise of distraction and a wandering mind from insights and influences. You still need to assess your environment, but as with driving a car, there are many aspects that are automatic in a good way. When you look at psychological dreams and work with the issues that come up, you will see that you can create a distance between your sense of self and the mind. You can spot these blocks in the waking time. For example, I had a dream where I was pulling a worm out of my foot. Then I saw another one and I went to pull it out, but it escaped back in. The foot in the dream seemed to represent my ground in moving forward in life, the steps I need to take. I also like to walk to process things. Worms in my dreams are a personal symbol. I have a memory from before I went to kindergarten where I saw a dog pooping and the poo was filled with worms. This freaked me out and I didn't want to poop, so I held it in. This symbol has changed over the years, but it comes down to eliminating things and allowing for the natural process. It actually has become a symbol for not completing things. It is like I eat and digest something but refuse to finish the task. In college, I saw a poster of a big space with a long line of toilets. No walls or stalls, just a row of toilets in an open room. On one of them was a man sitting in the pose of Rodin's The Thinker with the caption, "The job's not finished until the paperwork is done." To me, it is an image of not completing tasks, such as putting tools away. In my waking time, I had just upgraded my computer. It took a lot of time to ensure all the software was working. In removing the old computer, I discovered an older hard drive that was still sitting on the desk behind the monitor. I had planned to sell it from the computer before the one I replaced due to the type of connector it used. Then I felt compelled to make sure that everything got taken care of, that the job was actually finished. This went on for several days as I made sure I was thorough. and I spotted occasions where I went on to do some other task before completing the current one. I could feel when there was something nagging me, or when I realized I was just distracted, or even lazy and not taking the action needed. On reflecting on these various emotions in the background needed to be dealt with. As I spotted them, I got more done. It was more efficient and satisfying. It was not a compulsion, and it was a good lesson in getting better assessment of the size and scope of a project and the paperwork that goes with it, having a better map of all the steps involved. I learned how to become more thorough and diligent and how to assess the task before me more effectively. When we find these kind of psychological blocks or pressures, there are many possibilities. We can work through them or reject them, replacing them as possible, such as turning anxiety into excitement. We can also distract ourselves from them by doing something else. All of this is predicated on noticing them in the first place, or having a clear view of them and not just losing track of them. The dream allowed me to see one of them. It gave me a step back on the whole process. It didn't tell me what to do. It wasn't a message. It just reflected what was going on. I, in turn, reflected on it. When these kinds of psychological movements are dealt with, we have a greater space for dreams to go deeper into the subliminal, and in our waking life, there is more space in the mind stream for subtle impressions. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like. If you want more dreams, then subscribe or consider supporting the channel on Patreon with the link below. Till next time.